is one of the most influential musicians in Latin American music history. Well, today I want to tell you about a pianist and a composer by the name of Ernesto Lecuona. Ernesto was born in 1895 near Havana in Cuba. His father was a journalist from the Canary Islands. His mother was from Cuba, and she grew up in a very cultured family, so she encouraged education, especially culture, music, and all that. Now, he had an older sister. Ernesto's older sister was named Ernestino, and she was a pianist. She was a very good pianist. Actually went on to have her own career in music, and she became Ernesto's first music teacher. She was very good, and she realized that he was even better, and he's really kind of a child prodigy. By the time he was 5, he could really play quite difficult pieces very, very well. So he's 5, he can barely reach the pedals, if at all, but he has an amazing amount of skill. It seems like he understands music. He can play huge pieces just by memory. And people that listened were always astounded and would talk about it and write about it. So as many musicians do, he starts dabbling in composition on his own. He's still a kid. He's not being trained yet. And when he's 12, he writes a piece called Cuba y America, and it's actually published, which is quite astounding. And if that wasn't good enough, he starts conservatory there, the National Conservatory in Cuba, very soon after. And he graduates when he's 16 or 17 years old with the golden medal for pianists. So it's not like he just graduated. He was one of the top of his class because he graduated college at 16. So we know he was an amazing pianist, and he really loved the Western classical music. He loved Chopin and Liszt, of course, because those are the phenomenal piano composers. But he also loved the Cuban folk music and the rhythms that they had, the Afro-American rhythms that we now are so familiar with, but that wasn't the case at the time. During the 1920s, he became internationally famous, both as a pianist and as a composer. He was a phenomenal pianist and very great with showmanship as well, but his compositions were so colorful and so excited. This is before we have, it's so easy for us to hear music from all over the world at this point, but at that point, there's no internet, of course, but even like international TV and stuff, that is not there. So he goes around the world and he is touring not only the Americas, but also Europe, bringing this flair and these rhythms that people had not really been accustomed to, and he fused it so well. We have these audiences with people who have never heard Cuban-inspired rhythms and concert music, and they're hearing it for the first time, and they're captivated. It is so fun and exciting. So I already told you that his sister Ernestina was her own musician in her own right. She's a pianist as well. But then they also has a cousin named Margarita, and she is also a phenomenal composer and musician, and she writes a song called Babalu, and it is made very famous by none other than Desi Arnaz. There's a connection made there, and now Dizzy starts playing Ernesto's music as well. And so through this connection, he reaches a massive American audience, not just, the people that will sign up to come to concerts, but now everybody knows his music. In the 1930s and 40s, Ernesto forms this orchestra called the Lecuona Cuban Boys. Now, they're not all Cuban, but that doesn't matter. It becomes a very well-known group that tours the world. So he's not touring on his own anymore. It actually became one of the world's most successful Latin dance orchestra, and they toured internationally, introduced audiences across Europe and America to authentic Afro-Cuban music and rhythms long before this Latin music became mainstream and international. This was groundbreaking. So today we have these rhythms everywhere and in our mainstream music, but that was not the case. Lecuona's orchestra really helped pave the way for future Latin music popularity worldwide. While he's out there performing with his orchestra, performing also some piano solo parts and composing, he starts getting into film and he starts composing scores for films. And actually in 1942, he was nominated for an Academy Award for score for the movie Always in My Heart, because even Hollywood is now recognizing the magic of his music. In 1943, he premiered a new piano piece called Black Rhapsody at Carnegie Hall, and he used unusual percussion instruments that were quite the norm in Cuba but had not been heard in upscale New York, including the jawbone of a donkey, where if you scrape it, the teeth would rattle. That was interesting and never been heard before at Carnegie. Of course, this fascinated audiences and really anticipated the growing interest in percussion, heavy Latin music that would explode internationally decades and decades later. Despite his fame, he remained intensely connected to Cuba. He was all over the world, but he loved coming home. He loved the sounds and the music of home and all the pieces he wrote. Although often very classical, you can always distinctly hear the Cuban parts of him resonate within it. Then sadly, politics kind of closes that door on him. Because in 1959, Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution drastically transformed the country, and he was not able to align himself politically with communism. He opposed it, and so he felt he had to flee. He ended up spending a lot of time in Florida and in New York. This hurt him deeply, emotionally, in every which way. And he said publicly, "I will never perform piano again as long as Cuba is not free." He expressed his emotions, his feelings, his heart through piano. And I think this statement is such a reflection of this profound heartbreak that he had, because Cuba was in every part of him. As far as his private life, it was very private. Yes, he was very famous and recognizable in those days. He was world famous, but he never got married, and he kept his private very private. There was nothing you can find or read about him that's sensational or exciting. He is known for his music, only for his music, and that's how he put it out. We don't know any really much about it. We know he wasn't married, and we know he didn't have children, and I think most of his life was dedicated to his music, and I think the music was truly the love of his life. Then in 1963, he goes to the Canary Islands, his father's ancestral home. He goes there to one vacation, but also there's a concert there given in his honor with his music. And while there on vacation at his father's homeland, he has a heart attack and he passes away. I'm sure that he would have liked to have his whole life, including the end, be at Cuba, but that wasn't a possibility anymore. So it's kind of poetic that he goes back to his father's homeland and ends his life there. He wasn't buried there, however. His body was flown back to America, and he is buried in New York. Today, he is remembered as one of the greatest musical ambassadors of Cuban and Latin American rhythms and music, bridging classical music and popular entertaining Latin music, bridging the dance floors and the concert halls. More importantly, I think he let the world hear Cuban music truly as a music more than just a novelty, something that has its own grit and its own truth to it. His music is very distinct. You can hear that it's his, and it's very fun and exciting to listen to. So go and listen to something by Ernesto Lecuona.